Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepless Scientist, a quiet place in the cosmos where your thoughts can unwind and knowledge becomes a soft lullaby for the night. Tonight's journey will take us into time itself, not just how we measure it, but what it is, where it comes from, and whether the universe knows it exists at all. But before you settle in and get cozy, I'd love if you could take a moment to like this video and subscribe. Only if you truly find these quiet explorations enjoyable, and when you're ready, leave a comment to let me know where in the world you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. It's always such a joy to see all the places we gather from, each in our own little slice of time. Now feel free to dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for a soft background hum, and let's gently begin our journey into time together. And if your mind begins to wander, that's perfectly fine. Let it drift. We'll still be here, quietly unfolding the story. So let's start not with clocks or equations, but with something much closer. Something beating, softly, within you. Your heart. That quiet thud in your chest. Steady, persistent, ordinary. Is more than just a sign that you're alive. It's also a clock. Not a mechanical one, not a digital one, but a living one. A rhythm keeper of your body's time. It beats about once every second, each pulse a silent drum marking your presence in the world. Not fast, not slow, just steady. Long before humans ever thought to draw circles in the sand or hang clocks on walls, your body already knew about time. It knew it needed rest and waking, hunger and fullness, motion and stillness, and your heart was there, counting without numbers. It doesn't ask the hour, it doesn't worry about being late, it just keeps going. And that's the strange thing about time. We treat it like it belongs to the universe, like it's out there in space ticking forward on some cosmic watch. But in truth, the first time you ever knew about time wasn't from the stars or the sun. It was from your breath, your heartbeat, the rhythm of your feet when you first learned to walk. You didn't measure it. You felt it. You were it. And still are. Even now, as you lie here, maybe under a blanket or listening through headphones, your body is keeping time. Tiny structures in your brain called the suprachiasmatic nuclei, try saying that 3 times fast, are monitoring the fading light and telling your body, yes, it's nighttime now. Hormones are adjusting, muscles are resting, and your thoughts, like leaves drifting on a river, are beginning to slow. Time is happening, whether you pay attention to it or not. But here's the question we'll be holding gently throughout this journey. What is time, really? Is it simply change? The ticking from one moment to the next? Is it motion? The earth turning? Your cells dividing? Your tea cooling by the bed? Or is it something more? Something built into the bones of the universe like space or gravity. Some thinkers, like the physicist Carlo Rovelli, suggest that time isn't even real in the way we think it is. That it's not something fundamental, not a thing the universe needs to function. That it may only appear when there are relationships, interactions, events. No change, no time. And yet, you can feel it, can't you? Even now, you can feel this moment moving. That's the paradox. Time is everywhere, and yet it's hard to hold. You can't see it. You can't touch it. But you know it's there. You feel it in the ache of memory, in the flutter of nostalgia, in the way a song makes you remember a room that no longer exists, or the face of someone long gone. That's time. Not measured, not calculated, just present. Like mist on a morning window, and we've tried for so long to capture it, with calendars, with sundials, with watches that tick and glow and beep, with poetry, with music, with stories that begin and end. Our lives are shaped around time, birthdays, deadlines, anniversaries, countdowns. We race it, we chase it, we waste it, we treasure it. Sometimes we wish we could escape it. Sometimes we wish we could go back. But no matter how we shape it, time is the water we swim in. And so, tonight, let's slow it down. Let's look at time not as something to master, but as something to gently explore. We'll look at the time of the body, of the mind, and of the stars. We'll visit black holes where time bends and dreams where time dissolves. We'll ask whether the universe even experiences time, or whether it's all just us trying to make sense of the story we're in. And we'll do it slowly, like walking through a quiet museum after hours. No rush, no pressure, just wonder, unfolding softly. So as you settle in, just listen to your own rhythm. Maybe place a hand on your chest. Feel the beat. That's your personal metronome, your reminder that you're still here, still in this moment. And as long as you are, time is too. You don't need to understand everything that's coming. You don't need to stay awake. This journey is for both your thoughts and your dreams. Let it be what you need it to be. Time has already begun. Let's follow it together. It's often in the stillness of night that questions like these begin to stir. Not the practical questions, not where your keys are or whether you remembered to reply to that email, but the soft, echoing ones. The kind that slip in when the noise is quieted, when the lights are dim, when your thoughts are no longer being pulled in a dozen directions. And among those questions, time has a peculiar way of showing up, tapping gently on the windows of your mind. What is time, really? Why does it feel different now than it did this morning? Why did today pass so quickly, or drag on so endlessly? And perhaps, the most quietly unsettling of them all, will I ever truly understand time, or am I just drifting through it? You're not alone in asking, we all do, especially at night. It's not just because darkness reminds us of endings, of sleep, of stillness, of the daily cycle closing like a soft book. It's because night removes the distractions that usually keep these questions at bay. No appointments, no schedules, no deadlines. Just you, and a sense that something invisible is still moving. And it is. Time doesn't stop when we rest. It doesn't slow when we close our eyes. It continues, or so we think, unfolding in the background, moving everything forward in its quiet current. You might not hear it, but your body still knows it's there. Your cells continue their quiet work. Your heart keeps its rhythm. Your breath moves in and out like the tide. The world doesn't pause, it only softens. But even in that softness, the mystery remains. You see, time is different from everything else we study in science. We can point to mass, we can weigh energy, we can chart the force of gravity or the orbit of a moon. But time resists. It's not something we detect directly. It doesn't shimmer in a telescope or leave trails in a particle detector. Instead, we infer it. We feel it through change, through motion, through memory. We notice that things become different than they were, and we give that difference a name. We call it time. But what if we're wrong? What if time is not a thing at all, but just a convenient fiction? A map we've drawn to make sense of the landscape of change? Some scientists believe that time is not fundamental, that the universe doesn't have time in the way we experience it, that it's something that emerges from deeper patterns, from the interactions of particles, from the structure of information, from relationships. Imagine that. Imagine a universe where time doesn't flow. It just is, still, unmoving. And what we call the passage of time is just the way our consciousness steps through this stillness, like flipping pages in a book that has already been written. To many, that idea feels deeply unsettling. We're so used to thinking of time as motion, as a river carrying us forward, that the idea of it not flowing at all feels unnatural, even wrong. And yet, some of the most respected physicists, including Albert Einstein, have suggested that the flow of time might be an illusion, that the difference between past, present, and future is not something built into the fabric of reality, but rather something built into the mind, a perception, a story we tell ourselves so we don't feel lost. And that brings us to a deeper question. one that's not about physics but about perspective. If time isn't real, or isn't what we think it is, then what is this thing we feel so deeply? The ticking clock when we're waiting, the slowing seconds before a big decision, the way years seem to vanish in the blink of an eye when you look back. What if time is less about the universe and more about us? In that case, asking whether the universe knows what time is becomes even stranger, because maybe it doesn't. Maybe time doesn't exist until someone somewhere starts asking the question, until a consciousness like yours starts noticing change, wondering about memory, aching for the past or longing for the future. And maybe, just maybe, that's why the question always seems to come at night. Because night is when the world gets quiet enough for us to listen to that ache, to feel the strange stretch of minutes, the odd texture of now. It's when we notice the silence between events, when we become aware that the day is gone and that the next one hasn't started yet. We exist for a moment between what was and what will be. In the in-between, time becomes something you don't measure. You simply notice, like breath fogging a window then fading, like moonlight slipping across the floor. And this is where our journey begins, not with answers, but with attention, with noticing. As we move forward together through the sessions ahead, we'll explore how your brain constructs this experience. We'll explore how physics describes time, and how it sometimes denies it. We'll look at dreams, at entropy, at memory and motion and stillness. But most of all, we'll move slowly, because time, whatever it is, does not demand we rush. In fact, it may be that when we slow down, when we stop chasing the future or clinging to the past, that's when we actually begin to feel time for what it is. Or maybe that's when we begin to feel ourselves as part of something larger, quieter, and far more beautiful than we imagined. So, as you lie there now, with the lights low and the world muted, remember, you're not behind time. You're not ahead of it. You're exactly where time has brought you. And perhaps, just perhaps, you're also where time begins. Let that thought rest with you. And when you're ready, we'll step into the next part. The story of time not as a theory, but as something felt, something personal, something inside you. Let's return to a simple question. What is now? You may think it's obvious. Now is this moment. The one. You're in right now, listening to this voice, feeling the weight of the blanket over your legs, the faint hum of the night outside or the air touching your skin. It feels immediate, sharp, alive. A razor-thin sliver between past and future, a spotlight on the stage of your awareness. But here's something quietly astonishing. Now is not instantaneous. It's not a perfect point in time. It's not even the present moment as it truly is. The present you're experiencing right this very second already happened. Slightly, subtly, but undeniably. You're always a little bit behind reality. This isn't poetic exaggeration. It's neuroscience. When your brain receives signals, light through your eyes, vibrations in your ears, the press of fabric on your skin, it doesn't react instantly. These signals travel through nerves, are processed by different parts of the brain, and are stitched together into a coherent picture of what's going on. All of this takes time. A fraction of a second, yes, but time nonetheless. Roughly 200 to 500 milliseconds pass before your brain completes the construction of the moment you call now. That means the present you experience is actually a carefully curated illusion. A memory of something that has just barely slipped into the past. To account for this, your brain does something remarkable. It waits, it delays what you perceive, ever so slightly, in order to assemble a synchronized image of your world. Like a conductor pausing just long enough to ensure every instrument plays together, your brain buffers reality so your senses can agree. So you don't hear someone's words before you see their lips move, or feel a step before you see your foot hit the ground. This delay is small, so small you'd never consciously notice it. But it's there. And it's enough to make the experience of now not a dot in time, but a window, a few hundred milliseconds long, stitched from the past. And here's where it becomes truly strange. Your version of now might not match mine, or anyone else's, because this now window, this temporal bubble we walk around in, depends on all sorts of factors. How fast our brains process stimuli, how focused we are, how emotionally charged the moment is. Athletes sometimes report the world slowing down during moments of peak performance. In those seconds, their brains process more information, build more frames into their now, and expand the present. In contrast, in a moment of distraction or fatigue, the present can blur. You move, you speak, and only later realise you weren't fully there. Even among people in the same room, the shape of now can differ. Think about a moment of conversation. You speak, your friend listens, nods and replies. To you it feels like a smooth exchange. But beneath the surface, both of you are processing sounds, gestures and reactions with slightly different delays. Like two phones on. Different networks syncing a video call, your brains work to align, but never perfectly. There is always some drift. And yet, you feel together. The illusion holds. This illusion is so well constructed, so finely tuned, that unless you look directly at it, you'd never suspect it exists. But once you start noticing, really noticing, you realise how flexible and peculiar time inside your head really is. Even something as simple as catching a ball relies on this trick. You don't respond to where the ball is, but where your brain predicts it will be. Your mind, always slightly behind, must leap ahead to compensate. You're never fully in the now. You're part memory, part prediction, and in the space between them, your story unfolds. This illusion of now is not a flaw. It's not a glitch. It's a gift. It gives you stability, continuity. It lets you live in a world that feels whole, even when your senses are scattered across time. It gives you the feeling of presence, of being here, when in truth, your awareness is always playing catch-up. And that gives us a new way to think about time. Maybe time isn't just something that passes. Maybe it's something we build, a perceptual construction that takes change, motion, sensation, and turns them into meaning, into experience, into now. Now imagine this. Your now is moving with you. Like a bubble around your awareness, it slides forward as the seconds pass, always floating slightly behind the true present, but always giving you the feeling of being right there. Other people's bubbles are floating too, beside yours, ahead, behind. And though none of you are perfectly synchronized, you share the illusion. It's a strange kind of collective dream, but what a beautiful one it is. In this bubble, your memories gather, your attention wanders, you decide, you reflect, you reach toward the future, not from a single point, but from a shimmering slice of time that is always receding, always becoming memory, even as you live it. And that shimmering slice, your now, is where life happens. Not because it's objectively real, but because it's subjectively everything. So as you lie here, drifting towards sleep or simply resting in stillness, know that the moment you're feeling, this exact one, is a constructed miracle, a soft edit of reality, polished by your brain into coherence, and though the world continues beyond it, faster than you can follow, this moment is enough. It is your anchor, it is your pause in the rush, it is your now. There's a quiet ache that sometimes visits us in adulthood, a strange sense that time somehow used to move differently. You might remember summer afternoons from childhood that seemed to stretch forever, moments so wide and full that they felt like whole days on their own. The scent of chalk dust on a classroom floor, the way the light looked after school, waiting for a birthday and feeling like the day would never arrive. Now years slip by with barely a sound. You blink, and a week is gone. You turn your calendar, and the month is nearly over. And somewhere inside there's a soft bewilderment. Why is it all moving so fast? It isn't just your imagination. It isn't just nostalgia. It's neuroscience. The perception of time is deeply tied to something very simple and very slippery: novelty. When you experience something new, your brain has to work harder. It pays closer attention. It lays down more memory. It uses more resources to encode what's happening, because the event doesn't match a known pattern. And when you look back on that event later, it feels rich and detailed. It has weight. It takes up more mental space. In contrast, when your brain encounters the familiar, the same commute, the same office, the same breakfast, it barely stirs. It recognizes the pattern, compresses the experience, and stores just enough to keep functioning. These moments, when recalled, feel thinner, shorter, like they barely existed at all. This is one reason why childhood feels long and adulthood feels fast. As a child, nearly everything is new. Your brain is a sponge, absorbing rules, languages, sensations, social norms. You're constantly forming firsts. Your first day of school, your first scraped knee, your first snowfall. Even waiting feels larger, because you have fewer reference points. Waiting a week for something when you're 5 years old is waiting through a greater portion of your remembered life than it would be at 35. To a child, time is full, swollen with discovery. As we grow older, we trade novelty for efficiency. Our lives fill with repetition, routine, and habits. We drive the same roads, we eat similar meals, we work, we rest, we repeat. Our brains, ever efficient, begin to compress. Days blur, weeks blend, time seems to vanish, not because it has changed, but because we have. This effect becomes especially clear when you take a break from routine. Consider a vacation to a place you've never been before. In the moment, the days may seem to pass quickly. You're busy, engaged, distracted. But when you return and look back, the trip feels much longer than it actually was. That's because your brain encoded more. More sensory input, more emotional content, more novelty. This is known as the holiday paradox. Time felt short while it was happening, but looking back, it feels long. Your mind uses density of memory as a measure of duration, and it works in reverse too. Imagine being in an emergency, a car accident, a sudden fall, a moment of danger. Many people report time seeming to slow down. Each second feels like several. Everything is sharp, vivid, deliberate. That's not because your brain is slowing time. It's because your attention spikes. Your senses widen. Your brain starts writing in high detail, like flipping into slow motion to capture as much as it can. It's trying to save you. Time didn't change. Your processing speed did. These strange bends in time perception remind us of something subtle but profound. Your inner clock is emotional. It responds not just to external events, but to how those events feel. Boredom stretches time like taffy. Excitement compresses it. Fear sharpens it. Joy blurs it. Grief suspends it. You've likely had moments that felt frozen, standing at the edge of a big decision, or waiting for news. Time feels thick there. It doesn't move like a river. It hangs, heavy, quiet. And then, when the news comes or the choice is made, time rushes forward again, as if it had been waiting to catch up. All of this suggests that our internal experience of time is less like a clock and more like a heartbeat. It speeds up and slows down, not just with motion, but with meaning. And while the seconds on a watch tick by in perfect uniformity, your lived moments do not. Now, consider again why childhood feels longer. It isn't just because you were smaller or had fewer responsibilities. It's because time was dense. It was unfamiliar, unpredictable, vivid. The world was strange enough to stay interesting and safe enough to stay soft. Your brain was learning at a furious rate, and everything, even waiting, had weight. As you grew older, the rate of novelty declined. Firsts became fewer. Life settled. And time, no longer being filled with new memories, began to slip through the fingers of your awareness. But here's something comforting. You can, in a way, slow time again. Not by forcing the days to stretch, but by changing how you pay attention. When you pause, when you notice something deeply, when you step outside routine, your brain wakes up. It writes in high detail, and those moments, when remembered, will feel longer, fuller, more real. A walk without your phone, a new recipe, a different route home, listening to music in the dark, watching how the light shifts across the ceiling at sunset. These small acts of noticing aren't just pleasant, they help you inhabit time again rather than rushing through it. And as you lie here now, perhaps preparing for sleep, you can begin that noticing, not to memorize, not to hold on, but to feel the quiet weight of the covers, the softness of your breath, the sense of being here now in a moment that you'll never repeat, and yet will carry with you. It may not make the years go slower, but it can make them feel more yours. After all, time isn't just something we move through. It's something we fill with thought, with memory, with attention. And when you fill it, it lingers. There's a peculiar moment that happens each night, often unnoticed. A quiet dissolving, a gentle unravelling as your thoughts loosen from the world and drift towards something more fluid. You lie in bed, perhaps still thinking of the day, perhaps not thinking at all, and then something changes. Not suddenly, but like fog rolling in over a familiar field. The boundary between one thought and the next becomes porous. You slip softly into sleep, and then time breaks, or rather, it stops behaving. In dreams, the usual rules vanish. Minutes stretch, collapse, loop, or vanish altogether. You might spend what feels like hours exploring a strange city, only to wake and discover that you've been asleep for just 5 minutes. Or you may have a flash of dream that lasts less than a heartbeat, and yet carries the emotional weight of a lifetime. It's not just strangeness for strangeness' sake. There's something deeper happening here, something that tells us more about how time is constructed inside the mind. Let's begin with what science can tell us. Most dreaming, at least the vivid, memorable kind, happens during REM sleep. REM stands for rapid eye movement, a stage of the sleep cycle characterized by brain activity that is surprisingly similar to wakefulness. Your brain becomes electrically busy, almost as if it's turned back on, even though your body remains still. It is in this peculiar state, still body, vivid mind, that dreams unfold. And these dreams don't obey linear time. They skip scenes, reverse logic, ignore geography. You might walk into a room and find yourself in a memory from 10 years ago. You might start a conversation in one language and end it in another. A dream can begin at the end of a story and work its way backward without you ever noticing anything strange. That's because in dreams your brain is no longer bound by external time cues. There's no sunlight to track, no clock ticking in the corner, no sensory anchor to tie events to physical space. Instead, your brain is writing its own story, using fragments of memory, emotion, imagination, and letting those fragments arrange themselves in patterns that don't have to make logical sense. What guides the dream is not time, but feeling. This is why dream narratives are so elastic. One moment of joy can stretch into what feels like an hour. A flash of fear can erupt into a labyrinthine escape. The structure of the dream is emotional, not chronological. In some ways, this makes dreams more honest than waking life. They don't pretend that time is stable. They show us what time really is inside the mind. Fluid, shaped by focus and feeling, not by the turning of planets or the ticking of machines. And while dreams may seem chaotic, they're not random. There's growing evidence that dreams serve important purposes, consolidating memory, regulating emotion, even simulating possible futures. During REM sleep, your brain replays certain experiences from the day, not like a documentary, but like an abstract painting. It lifts moments out of context, recolours them, connects them to older memories, reshapes them into stories. It's as if the mind, freed from the need to appear rational, finally begins its deeper work. And here's where time becomes something truly mysterious. In dreams, we don't just relive, we travel. You can return to childhood, visit places that never existed, speak to people who are no longer alive. You can imagine outcomes that never came to be, or revisit crossroads you thought you'd forgotten. The linear arrow of time dissolves and something else takes its place, a kind of circular memory or emotional logic where the past and future blend. This ability to step backward and forward in internal time is sometimes called mental time travel. It's something humans do even when we're awake, though it's often more vivid in dreams. We imagine tomorrow's conversation. We replay yesterday's regret. We picture who we once were, or who we might become. In dreams, this ability becomes limitless, unchained. And though it might seem strange, this mental time travel may be one of the core functions of consciousness. It allows you to prepare, to reflect, to imagine, to learn. It gives shape to your identity, not just by what you do, but by how you remember it, how you dream about it, how you feel it resonating across imagined timelines. Time, in this view, is not a backdrop. It's a canvas, and the brush is memory. Even waking, this ability doesn't go away. When you daydream, when you reminisce, when you anticipate, you're not in the present. You're not really anywhere. You're dreaming while awake, stretching and folding your internal sense of time just as freely as you do at night. And when you fall asleep again, you return to the realm where time becomes watercolour. This may explain why, upon waking, dreams often fade so quickly. It's not that they're less real, it's that they belong to a different clock. One your waking mind doesn't always recognise. Like a song in a forgotten language, the dream slips away because its rhythm doesn't match the rhythm of the day. But even when you forget the details, some part of the dream lingers. A feeling, a question, a shift in mood, a strange clarity. That's dream time. Not a record of events, but a whisper from a deeper self. Not bound by clocks, but still profoundly connected to who you are. So tonight, as you drift, or as you simply lie still and breathe, know that you are stepping into a place where time will lose its shape. And that's okay. Let it come undone. Let it swirl and stretch and fold itself around you. Your mind knows what to do there. It's done it 1,000 nights before, and when you return, you may not remember the story, but some part of you will remember the shape of time, as only dreams can draw it. There's something comforting about the ticking of a clock, each second neat and precise, slipping into the next like footsteps on a quiet road. It feels solid, dependable, as if time itself moves forward in steady rhythm, undisturbed by context or place. You wake, you sleep, the earth spins, the minutes pass. The clock on your wall agrees with the one in your pocket. Time, it seems, is universal, except it isn't. In 1905, a man named Albert Einstein quietly broke this illusion. With his theory of special relativity, he showed that time doesn't tick the same for everyone. It bends, it stretches, it waits. It's not fixed like the road beneath your feet. It's more like the fabric of your clothes, able to wrinkle and pull depending on how you move. To put it simply, the faster you go, the slower your time flows. This isn't poetry. It's experimentally confirmed physics. Imagine two people, twins, born at the same time. One stays on Earth, the other boards a spaceship and travels at a significant fraction of the speed of light. When the travelling twin returns, perhaps years later, they will be younger than the one who stayed behind. Not just in appearance. their body will have experienced less time. This is not science fiction. It's called time dilation, and it's as a direct consequence of moving through space. Speed slows time down. The faster you move, the more stretched your seconds become, not from your perspective, but from the perspective of someone watching you. To you, everything feels normal, but to the outside world you've paused just a little, and the effect isn't just theoretical. It happens every day, quietly, invisibly, above your head. High above the Earth, satellites orbit the planet carrying extremely precise atomic clocks. These satellites are the backbone of our global positioning system, GPS. And in order for them to function properly, their clocks must be corrected for relativistic effects. Why? Because time moves differently up there. There are two factors at play. First, the satellites are moving very quickly, which, according to special relativity, slows their time down compared to someone standing still on Earth. But second, they're also farther from Earth's gravity, and general relativity tells us that gravity slows time. So being farther from that gravitational pull means their time speeds up compared to ours. These two effects partially cancel out, but not completely. The result is that without accounting for relativity, GPS would be off by about 10 kilometers per day. Your phone would get lost, planes would miss their paths, systems would fail. Einstein's equations, once scribbled in a notebook, now quietly guide billions of devices across the world. So what does this mean for you? It means that time isn't a fixed rhythm echoing through the universe. It means there's no master clock, no universal second-hand ticking in the void. Time is local. It belongs to where you are, how fast you're going, and how much gravity is pulling on you. Two people can experience different durations between the same two events, and both be right. This breaks one of our deepest assumptions, that there is a single shared now that links all things, that the universe, like a great stage, has a central clock behind the curtain. But the universe doesn't operate on shared time. It operates on space-time, a woven fabric of space and time together, where your motion and position shape the rhythm of your seconds. It's as if each person carries their own metronome, ticking in harmony only when standing still together, but drifting slightly apart the moment one takes a step. It's subtle, it's strange, and it's incredibly beautiful. You see, in your day-to-day life, these effects are too small to notice. If you run for a bus, you won't return younger than your friend walking beside you. But on cosmic scales, near black holes, aboard fast-moving spacecraft, or at the edge of time itself, these differences become profound. Imagine standing on the edge of a black hole. The gravity is so intense that time, from your perspective, crawls. To someone watching from a safe distance, you appear frozen, unmoving, paused in a moment you can't escape. But to you, time continues, as normal as breath. You could read a book there, sip imaginary tea, watch a star pass above, and the universe would race ahead without you. It is one of the strangest truths of modern physics. Time is not what we think it is. It's not universal. It's personal. And yet, this doesn't make it less real. It makes it more intimate. The seconds you experience are yours, shaped by your path, your position, your place in the cosmos. Even now, as you lie still, Earth is spinning at over 1,600 kilometers per hour, orbiting the Sun at about 107,000 kilometers per hour, and moving through the galaxy at speeds far beyond your perception. And with every motion, your time bends, just a little, not enough to notice, but enough to matter. You're not separate from this dance. You're part of it, stitched into the fabric of time, not as a passive passenger, but as a living, ticking clock of your own. So the next time you check your watch, remember, it's not measuring a universal truth. It's telling you your time, your rhythm here, now, in this gravity, on this planet, in this frame of motion. And that's all it needs to be. Because even if time bends and drifts and disagrees across the stars, Your moments still belong to you, and that makes them precious. Even the quiet ones, especially the quiet ones. We often imagine time as a flowing river, always moving forward, never turning back. We picture ourselves as boats drifting along its surface, carried by its current from past to future. Each moment comes, then slips away. What was is gone. What is yet to be has not arrived. And what is now, this shimmering moment, is all we truly possess. But what if that isn't how time works? What if the river isn't flowing at all? What if it's frozen? This idea, at once unsettling and oddly comforting, comes from a concept in physics known as the block universe. It's one of the stranger consequences of Einstein's relativity, and one of the most quietly radical ideas about time that science has ever proposed. In the block universe, time is not a series of fleeting moments strung together like beads on a necklace. Instead, it is a single, vast structure, a four-dimensional space-time continuum in which all moments exist equally. Past, present, and future are not flowing one into the next. They are all there, laid out like rooms in a mansion you have not yet entered, or like frames of a film reel that exist all at once, even though you only see one frame at a time. From this view, the flow of time, the sensation of now moving forward, is not something that happens in the universe. It is something that happens in us. Our minds move, our awareness marches through slices of the block. But the block itself does not change. And if that's true, then the past is not lost. The future is not unwritten. They are simply elsewhere. Just as the room you left this morning still exists, even if you're no longer standing in it, the moment you were born still exists somewhere in space-time, not as a memory, but as a location. You've just moved on. It's a difficult idea to accept, emotionally, not just logically. We're used to thinking of time as a burning fuse, or a rising tide, or a thread being woven. Something active, something urgent, something alive. But the block universe is quiet, still, complete. It tells us that the cosmos isn't unfolding, it's already unfolded. What we experience as change is just our journey through a landscape that has already been written. And our consciousness, that flickering light of awareness, is what makes it feel like a story. This idea comes naturally from relativity. In Einstein's universe, there is no universal now. Different observers, moving at different speeds or living in different gravitational fields, will slice space-time differently. What is present for one may be past for another. There is no privileged moment that all observers agree on. So rather than trying to define a moving present, some physicists suggest we abandon the idea entirely. Instead, we accept that every moment, every tick of every clock, is just as real as this one. And time doesn't move. We do. Imagine a loaf of bread. It sounds silly, but it's the metaphor physicists actually use. A loaf of space-time, long, wide, and thick. You are a line that cuts through that loaf. Your birth is one slice, your childhood another. This moment, you lying quietly, listening, is yet another slice. Each one exists. Each one is real, and your consciousness is the knife passing through. You do not leave behind the earlier slices. They remain part of the loaf. You do not leap forward into the future. That too is already there, just farther ahead, waiting for your path to reach it. So what does this mean for us? For how we live? It means that every moment you've ever loved is still somewhere in the universe. The laugh you shared 5 years ago, the walk through falling leaves, the look in someone's eyes that you thought was gone, they are not erased. They are simply not here, but elsewhere, just as real as this one. And perhaps that offers a kind of peace. In a world that moves so fast, that rushes from one thing to the next, the block universe reminds us that nothing is truly lost. Not joy, not pain, not even time itself. All of it is still out there, a quiet architecture of everything that ever was. It also reframes how we think about the future. If the future already exists in this block, then it is not a blank page, but a page you haven't yet read. Your actions still matter. Your choices still unfold, but they are part of a larger structure, a map that includes every step you've taken and every step you will take. And here's where things become beautifully strange. Some philosophers and physicists suggest that consciousness, the experience of awareness moving from moment to moment, is what gives time its flavour. That the passage of time is not a property of the universe, but of the mind. That we carry our sense of now like a lantern through the block, illuminating one room at a time, and that means you're not drifting helplessly through a river of moments. You're exploring a mansion, a story, a structure so vast and quiet that it holds all the selves you've ever been and all the selves you have yet to meet. In this view, nothing is ever truly gone. It may be distant, it may be inaccessible, but it is not erased. It is still there, written into the fabric of reality. So tonight, as you lie still, imagine that your life is not a line being drawn, but a tapestry already woven. You're not watching moments vanish, you're watching them arrive, and every second, every breath, every memory is part of something whole. Time does not need to move to hold meaning. It only needs to exist, and so it does. Time is often presented as singular, as if there's just one version of it, moving steadily forward, the same everywhere and for everyone. But as you've probably begun to feel by now, time isn't like that at all. It doesn't hum at a universal pitch. It doesn't come in a single key. Time has layers, flavours, rhythms, and depending on where and who you are, you may be hearing a completely different song. Let's begin close to home. In fact, within you. Biological time is the kind you feel but rarely name. It's the rhythm of your cells, your hormones, your appetite, your sleep. It's not measured in seconds or minutes, but in pulses. The slow wave of waking and resting, the cycle of light and dark that guides your body like an ancient sun clock buried deep in your brain. Every living creature carries its own internal timekeeper. In humans, it lives in a tiny part of the brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, just above the point where the optic nerves cross. It's barely the size of a grain of rice, but it coordinates thousands of biological processes, from when you feel sleepy to how your liver metabolizes sugar, all based on time. This internal clock follows a roughly 24-hour cycle. It's not perfect, closer to 24.2 hours in most people, but it's constantly adjusted by light, by food, by social cues. When you cross time zones and feel that strange dislocation known as jet lag, what you're really experiencing is two clocks, the world's and your body's, falling out of sync. But biological time is not just circadian, it also pulses in other ways. Your heart beats once every second or so. Your breath rises and falls around a dozen times each minute. Your temperature shifts throughout the day. And over longer arcs, your body measures time through development, aging, and repair. There is a kind of softness to biological time. It flows in waves, not ticks. It adapts, fluctuates, feels. It responds to season, emotion, even memory. And it's deeply personal. No two people's inner clocks run exactly alike. Then, just beside this slow, living time, is atomic time. Cold, precise, mechanical. The gold standard of modern measurement. Atomic clocks work by tracking the oscillations of atoms, usually cesium, which vibrate at incredibly stable frequencies. The official definition of 1 second is tied to 9,192,631,770 cycles of radiation, corresponding to the transition between two energy states of a cesium-133 atom. That's not poetry. That's how we define time itself in scientific terms. These clocks are so accurate that they won't drift more than a second in millions of years. They're the heartbeats of satellites, the sync points of global networks, the guardians of every GPS calculation and financial transaction. In a world that runs on coordination, planes landing, stock markets updating, phone calls connecting, atomic time is king. But it's also alien. You don't feel cesium vibrating. You don't live by 9 billion ticks per second. It's a time designed for systems, not souls, for machines, not minds. It brings the promise of universality, of sameness, but at the cost of meaning. And then, beyond even that, is cosmic time, the time of galaxies and stars, of expansion and origin. Cosmic time doesn't care about your heartbeat or your atomic oscillations. It is vast, indifferent, defined by the structure of the universe itself. In cosmology, we often speak of cosmic time as the time since the Big Bang, a clock that ticks from the first moment the universe became transparent and measurable. In this framework, the universe is about 13.8 billion years old. But even that number depends on your frame of reference. Out in deep space, far from gravity, time may tick slightly faster. Near a dense star or galaxy, it ticks slower. In pockets of the universe expanding faster than ours, time may feel different still. So, what does this mean for someone lying quietly in bed, listening to the night breathe? It means you are surrounded by a chorus of clocks, your cells humming in circadian rhythms, your watch counting seconds with digital precision, the Earth rotating slowly under stars, the moon tugging tides on your behalf, the sun arching overhead in a clockwork that has guided farmers and dreamers for thousands of years, and beyond all that, galaxies drifting apart, the sky stretching wider, and a cosmic clock ticking toward whatever lies ahead. But the moon doesn't know it's night. That's something we invented, something we felt. Night is not an event in physics, it's an experience in consciousness, and maybe that's the most important clock of all. The one inside you that says, this is the moment I feel. Not because a cesium atom clicked, or because the galaxy rotated, but because something in you recognized it, named it, placed it on your personal timeline. Timekeeping, in the end, is not just about coordination. It's about continuity, about knowing that this moment follows another, that you were there, and now you are here, and that means something. It's about memory, anticipation, meaning, love. Because when you say, it's been a long day, or time flew, or it feels like just yesterday, you're not talking about seconds, you're talking about life. You're speaking a language no atomic clock will ever understand. So tonight, as you listen, maybe to this voice, maybe to the silence behind it, know that you are sitting at the intersection of all these timelines, a traveller across rhythms, a keeper of clocks, a flicker of now in a cosmos of forever, and all your clocks, however imperfect, however many, are still ticking together in this one precious moment. Picture yourself holding a snow globe. From the outside, the world inside seems to obey familiar rules. The tiny house stays rooted, the trees don't wander, the snow settles until you shake it. There's a sequence, stillness, motion, stillness again, cause and effect. A quiet, ordered little world. Now imagine shrinking yourself down and stepping inside the snow globe. But not just shrinking your body, shrinking your sense of reality, your ability to measure, even your idea of time itself. You become small enough to dance among the snowflakes as they hang suspended in the water. And then something strange happens. Time stops making sense. This is what happens at the quantum edge, the smallest scale of reality, where particles behave less like little marbles and more like flickering suggestions. In this realm, our usual ideas about time, sequence and causality begin to unravel. replaced by something far more fluid. At this level, superposition is the rule. A particle can be in multiple states at once. It can be here and there. It can spin one way and the other. It doesn't decide until you look, until you measure, until something interacts with it and forces a choice, which means, in a way, the particle doesn't experience time the way we do. Not before we touch it. Because in our world, events follow one another. We remember yesterday. We plan for tomorrow. We expect that if we drop a ball, it will fall. But in the quantum world, things aren't so tightly stitched. The ball isn't dropped. It's maybe dropped, maybe not, until someone watches the film and says, yes, there it is. Some interpretations of quantum physics go further still. They suggest that time itself may not be fundamental, that it's not a built-in feature of the universe, but a kind of illusion, or an emergent property that only appears when systems become large enough, complex enough, and connected enough to create the sense of before and after. In this view, the deep structure of reality isn't ticking, it's timeless. Imagine a chessboard before the first move. The board exists, the pieces are arranged, the rules are in place, but nothing has happened yet. There's no story, no causality, no clock. Time, in this analogy, begins with the first move, with change, with difference, with a relationship between pieces, not because the board started ticking, but because something happened. Physicist Carlo Rovelli calls this relational time, the idea that time doesn't exist as a thing on its own, like a river or a ruler, but only appears in the relationships between events, between systems, between changes, and on the quantum level, where things can be entangled, meaning their states are mysteriously connected across space. Time may not be flowing at all. It may be waiting for a context, for a connection, for something to collapse the cloud of possibility into a single story. Some physicists even propose that time might emerge from entanglement itself, that when two particles become correlated, when their futures are somehow linked, that's when time appears. Not because a clock is ticking, but because something is happening between. This idea is difficult to grasp, especially when we're used to thinking of time as the background of everything, the silent canvas on which the universe paints its story. But at the quantum level, time doesn't seem to exist in that way. There is no shared now, no absolute before or after, just probabilities waiting to become patterns. So what does this mean for you, lying here, resting, listening? It means that the ticking you hear in your mind, the sensation of now becoming then, of moments cascading like raindrops, may not be part of the deep structure of reality. It may be something your consciousness builds out of change, out of contrast, out of memory. And that's not a weakness. That's a miracle. Because the universe may be timeless, but you are not. You are a narrator, a composer, a weaver of moments. You take tangled quantum threads and knit them into a story, into a self, into a timeline. And even if the deepest particles don't experience time, even if they sit in silent uncertainty until the world nudges them, you experience time. You feel it pass. You watch it stretch and twist. You fill it with meaning. Maybe that's the greatest difference between particles and people. A particle can exist without time, but a person carries it like breath. So tonight, as you settle into stillness, think of the quantum world not as a cold, confusing tangle of equations, but as a soft cloud out of which your mind pulls warmth and rhythm. And when you sleep, when your own timeline drifts and dreams, know that somewhere, far beneath your thoughts, time is quiet. It's not gone. It's simply waiting for the next move on the board. We often think of time as something that flows all on its own, like a river that winds forward regardless of what happens along its banks. We picture it ticking by steadily in the background, invisible but constant, carrying us forward from one moment to the next, whether we're ready or not. But what if time doesn't flow when nothing happens? What if, when everything is perfectly still, time itself disappears? It sounds strange, maybe even impossible, but to many physicists and philosophers, this isn't just a metaphor, it's a real possibility. Imagine a universe where nothing moves, no particles bounce, no stars burn, no thoughts form, no clocks tick. Just structure, frozen, unchanged. Would that universe still experience time? From our usual perspective, the answer might seem like yes. After all, the universe still exists. Isn't that enough? But from the perspective of physics, particularly a branch called relational physics, the answer may be no. Time, in this view, doesn't exist on its own. It arises only when things change, when they interact, when they relate. Without relationships, without contrast, without before and after, there is no time, there is only is. Think of a photograph, a perfectly still image of a dancer, mid-movement. If you stare at that one photo forever, does the dance continue? Without a sequence, a story, a comparison to something else, that single frame holds no time within it. It just exists. Now imagine an entire universe like that. Not one frame from a film, but only the film still, with no play button. It exists, but nothing happens. In such a universe, there's no arrow pointing forward, no difference between what was and what will be. And without that difference, time becomes irrelevant, or perhaps more accurately, time never even begins. This is the core of relational time, an idea advanced most notably by physicist Carlo Rovelli. He argues that time is not an independent feature of the universe. It is not a background, like a stage on which events unfold. Instead, it is a result of the relationships between things, a measure of how one part of the system changes in relation to another. You don't need time to exist in some absolute way. You just need motion, correlation, change. A tick on a clock only means something because it marks a difference from the tick before it. A heartbeat is only felt because it echoes the one that came before. A memory only exists because it differs from now. When we experience time, what we're really experiencing is contrast. And when nothing contrasts, when all is frozen, time folds in on itself and vanishes. You can feel a version of this in your own life, in quiet moments when nothing seems to be happening. Maybe it's a long pause in a conversation, or waiting in a silent room, or lying awake at night when the world feels paused, as if you're the only thing still moving. In those moments, time doesn't seem to stop, but it does seem to lose its urgency. It becomes soft, faint, almost background noise, and then the smallest movement, a sigh, a flicker of thought, brings it back. This idea has profound consequences for how we understand the universe itself. Because if time only arises from change, then the question, when did the universe begin, becomes more complicated. Perhaps there was no before the Big Bang. Not because it's unreachable, but because before has no meaning in the absence of events. Maybe time didn't begin at a moment. Maybe it began when contrast did, when particles spread out, when heat separated from cold, when patterns became possible. And if the universe ever returns to perfect stillness, a state known as heat death, where all energy is evenly spread and no change can occur, then time might end again. Not with a bang, not with a clock striking zero, but with a fading, a soft disappearance into uniformity, a stillness so complete that time, having no contrast left to measure, simply ceases to exist. And yet, this isn't a bleak thought. It's quiet, poetic. It reminds us that time is not a tyrant marching us forward. It's a story we tell ourselves, written in motion and memory, built from the relationships between things, between stars and atoms, between people and days, between this breath and the next. Without motion, Time is a blank canvas, but with just a single brush stroke, a single change, it begins again. This helps us understand the connection between time and awareness, because consciousness too arises in contrast. The moment you notice your thoughts, the moment you realize you are dreaming, the moment something shifts in your understanding, that's when your internal clock seems to start ticking. You feel the movement, you feel time again, which leads to a gentle question. Does a still mind live outside of time? In deep meditation, or in sleep, or in those drifting moments just before you wake, time often feels like it loosens its grip. Minutes pass without weight. Hours dissolve like mist. You emerge not quite sure how long you were gone, only that something happened while you were elsewhere. It's not that time disappeared, it's that nothing contrasted, and that's all time needs. Not a ticking clock, but something to differ from. So tonight, as you lie still, try not to measure your thoughts. Don't count the seconds, don't chase the ticking. Just let the stillness settle around you. Let your body and breath fade into the quiet. Because in the silence, time becomes gentle, not gone, just resting, waiting for the next ripple. Step outside one night and look up. You'll see stars scattered across the sky like quiet punctuation marks in an unwritten sentence. The moon might be rising or hanging low like a lantern over rooftops. Everything above seems ancient, steady and slow, a kind of cosmic clock that has been ticking since long before we arrived. But ask yourself, does any of it know that time is passing? Does the moon know it is night? Does the universe know it is old? For centuries, humans have looked to the heavens for rhythm, using the motion of the sun to mark days, the cycles of the moon to track months, and the slow procession of the stars to measure the ages. We've built calendars, rituals, and entire civilizations around the sky's patient movement, and yet the cosmos itself remains utterly silent about what any of it means. The stars do not celebrate their own birthdays. The galaxies do not count revolutions. The universe doesn't tick. It doesn't wait. It doesn't hurry. If time exists out there, it does so without awareness. Because time, as we experience it, is not just the motion of planets or the vibration of atoms. It's the contrast between moments, the memory of what was, the anticipation of what might be. It's the feeling that now is different than before, and that difference matters. But rocks do not remember. Oceans do not anticipate. Light does not care whether it is early or late. So perhaps time, real, felt, living time, is not a property of the universe, but of consciousness, of minds that notice, of beings that feel change, remember change, respond to change, of creatures like us, for whom contrast becomes narrative, and narrative becomes meaning. This doesn't mean the physical processes of the universe aren't real. Galaxies do expand, stars do burn, atoms do decay. But whether these things happen in the way we understand, with a past, a present, a future, or whether they simply are arranged in a vast timeless structure, is still open to debate. In the absence of a mind, what is change? Is a tree falling in an empty forest still an event, if no one is there to notice its difference from the silence that came before? Some physicists and philosophers suggest that without consciousness, time might exist only as geometry, a set of relationships between events, laid out like points in space. Like dots on a page, the moments exist, but they don't flow unless something traces a line through them, and that something might be a mind. Your mind. You are the line that connects the dots. You're the narrator moving through the landscape of events. You bring the rhythm, the sequence, the weight. Without you, the universe might still unfold, but no one would be there to know it was unfolding. No one would say, that came before this, or now is different from then. In this way, memory becomes essential to time. You're not just aware of now. You're aware that this now follows another, that it replaces something. that it will too be replaced. This sense of continuity is what gives time its texture, its stretch, its sorrow, its wonder. Without memory, every moment is just itself. No beginning, no ending, no direction. A goldfish, it's said, lives only in the present. We live in stories, in sequences, in timelines drawn across the canvas of consciousness. And that brings us to one of the most curious ideas of all. That time, as we know it, may not be possible without both memory and entropy. The tendency of systems to move from order to disorder. Entropy gives the universe an arrow, a direction in which things tend to unfold. Ice melts, smoke disperses, buildings decay. Eggs, once scrambled, don't unscramble. And your brain, like all physical systems, is built to store experiences in ways that depend on this arrow. You remember the past because it left a trace in your neurons, a pattern that would not exist without change and without direction. You can't remember the future, not because it's forbidden, but because entropy hasn't carved a trail for it yet. The past is written in the structure of things. The future is blank, a smooth page waiting for heat and time to mark it. In this sense, the experience of time arises not from the universe alone, but from a relationship between the universe and a system that can notice its changes, can record them, predict them, interpret them. And so we return to our original question. Does the universe experience time? Not in the way we do. Not with longing or regret. Not with waiting. Not with surprise. The universe holds time as a possibility, a structure, a stage. But we are the actors. We are the audience. We are the whisper that says, now. And maybe that's what makes consciousness so strange, so rare, so powerful. It doesn't just exist. It moves. It marks. It remembers. It imagines. It creates time by living it. So when you lie in the dark and feel the day slipping behind you, when you remember a laugh, or anticipate a morning, or wonder what might have been, you are creating time. You are building its rhythm. You are composing its melody. The stars do not know they are old. The moon does not know it is night. But you do. And that knowing is time. There's a comfort in watching something fall into place. A puzzle piece sliding into the right spot. A stack of clean laundry folded just so. The way a room feels after you've straightened it. Quiet. Ready. Waiting. But things don't stay that way for long. A breeze through the window scatters the papers. A careless step knocks the neat pile askew. A moment's pause, and what was tidy begins to slip into something less defined. This slow unravelling, this tendency toward messiness, is not just a fact of life. It's a law of nature. It's called entropy, and it explains why time, unlike space, has a direction. In thermodynamics, entropy measures the number of ways a system can be arranged, the number of microscopic configurations that still result in the same overall state. The more disorder, the more possibilities, and the more possibilities, the higher the entropy. The second law of thermodynamics tells us something simple, yet profound. In an isolated system, like the universe, entropy always increases. That's why a hot cup of tea grows cold, but a cold cup never heats itself. Why a sandcastle collapses into the beach, but the beach never assembles a sandcastle. Why memories accumulate but are never perfectly erased. It's not that these things are forbidden in reverse, it's that their reverse is so improbable, so statistically unlikely, that we simply never see it happen. It's as if the universe is walking through a field of cards, once perfectly stacked, now knocked loose with every step. Not by cruelty or carelessness, but simply because there are more ways for things to be unstacked than stacked. And so, with every tick, with every breath, the universe explores its possibilities, moving from ordered beginnings into a cloud of disorder that grows ever larger. That's what gives time its arrow. Because while we can move freely in space, forward, backward, left, right, we can only move one way in time. We can only walk toward more entropy, never less. A broken egg can't unbreak, a bell can't unring, a flower can't reassemble from its fallen petals. You can remember the moment you heard a song for the first time, but you can't unknow it. This isn't just a poetic image, it's physics. And unlike the rest of physics, which is often symmetrical, indifferent to the flow of time, entropy points a specific way. It says, from order to disorder. That's the direction things go. In fact, it's the only fundamental law of nature that gives us a direction. Without entropy, the universe might look the same forward and backward. Equations don't mind which way time flows. They work both ways. But entropy minds. It insists. It declares a preference. And so, it becomes the hinge upon which memory swings. You remember the past, not the future, because the past was more ordered. Your memories are traces, lower entropy structures left behind by higher order configurations. They are the footprints of a world slowly coming undone. Your thoughts, your plans, your identity, all formed against this gentle current of decay. It might sound melancholic, but it isn't. It's simply motion. It's simply the way the story unfolds. Think of it this way. If time is a wind, then entropy is the direction it blows. You're not the leaf caught in it, helpless and fluttering. You're the sail that catches it, that shapes it, that makes it carry you forward. There's an image that physicists sometimes use to describe entropy, a box of sand and a fan. Imagine placing all the grains neatly in a corner. That's low entropy. That's structure. Then you turn on the fan. The grains scatter. They fill the box in 1,000 chaotic ways, each new arrangement more disordered than the last. Now, could the fan reverse itself? Could it pull the grains back to the corner? In theory, maybe. But in reality, never. There are simply too many disordered states. And so, the grains remain scattered. Not because of failure, but because of possibility. And yet, even in this cascade toward chaos, something beautiful happens. Structure can emerge. Life, for example, builds itself in defiance of entropy, at least temporarily. Plants take scattered sunlight and rearrange it into sugar, into wood, into blossoms. Animals take food and build muscles, brains, behaviour. You too are made of moments caught in order, memories arranged, thoughts stacked, dreams assembled from noise. But all of this comes at a cost. The entropy is not erased, it's displaced. You create temporary islands of order by allowing the world around you to grow more disordered. Your body burns energy and releases heat. Your mind builds meaning while the cells that carry it slowly wear down. Even the thoughts that hold this story are shaped by a million tiny imbalances, ions flowing across neural gates, breaking bonds to build new ones. Entropy increases, but so does understanding, so does love, so does the quiet wisdom of knowing that your time flows in one direction, and that every step is unique because it cannot be walked again. If time were symmetrical, nothing would matter. Every path could be undone, every choice erased. But because entropy leads us forward, your actions carve permanent trails. And maybe that's not a limitation. Maybe that's meaning. Maybe that's the shape of a life well lived. Not a loop, but a line. Not a reversal, but a record. So tonight, as you lie still, think of time not as a thief, but as a wind that carries you. And entropy, not as an enemy, but as the reason your memories have weight, your stories have shape, your breath has direction. Because there is only one way to go, and that's what makes it yours. Try to picture the beginning of everything. Not just the beginning of your life or the earth, or even the stars in the sky. but the very first moment anything at all could happen, the point before which there were no clocks, no stories, no before to speak of. What was that beginning like? Many of us imagine the Big Bang as a kind of explosion, loud, dramatic, maybe a little violent. Something bursting outward from a pinpoint into a waiting void. But the truth is quieter, stranger, and far more delicate. The Big Bang wasn't just an explosion. It was the beginning of structure. More specifically, it was the beginning of low entropy, a state of order, symmetry, and smoothness, unlike anything the universe has known since. This seems paradoxical at first. How could the most chaotic sounding event in cosmic history be the most orderly moment of all? But from the perspective of entropy, that's exactly what it was. At the very start, the universe wasn't full of stars or galaxies or tangled clouds of gas. It was full of a smooth, hot plasma, evenly distributed, almost featureless, with barely any wrinkles or clumps. And in that smoothness, there was simplicity. There were very few ways for that system to be arranged and still look the same, which means very low entropy. It's this initial orderliness that gave rise to the arrow of time, because from that unlikely starting point, the universe had only one direction it could go, toward disorder, toward complexity, toward dust and structure and stories. Imagine rolling a marble across a tabletop. If the table is perfectly flat, the marble stays still, but tilt it just slightly, and suddenly the marble has somewhere to go, a direction, a future. The Big Bang tilted the table. It didn't just start time, it started the conditions for time, the slope that leads from past to future. And on that slope, structure began to fall apart. But in falling apart, it formed new patterns. Gravity pulled atoms together into stars. Stars fused atoms into heavier elements. Those elements formed planets, oceans, and eventually life. It's tempting to think that complexity is the opposite of disorder, that life, thought, cities, and dreams are defiant acts of order in a crumbling world. But from a thermodynamic perspective, complexity is a form of entropy, a way for energy to spread out and make more mess. A star is a temporary furnace. A brain is a chemical fireworks show. Both increase the universe's disorder, even as they build something astonishing for a moment. So, when we ask why time moves forward, the deeper question is, why did the universe begin with such astonishing order? Why was the marble placed at the top of the hill instead of halfway down? That's still one of the biggest mysteries in cosmology. Some physicists propose that we live in a special kind of universe, one of many possible patches in a larger multiverse, and ours just happened to begin in a state of low entropy by chance. Others suggest deeper principles at play, perhaps hidden dimensions or quantum fields that collapse in just the right way. But regardless of why, we know this. Without that low entropy beginning, time would have no arrow. You'd have no memory, no future, no story. The universe would be a featureless fog, uniform, unchanging, unnoticeable. Instead, you're here, lying still, listening, thinking, inside a universe where things happen, where each moment can differ from the last, where memory can be built and change can take shape, and all of it, every difference, every cause, every effect, flows down the slope that was set at the very beginning. There's a haunting beauty to this idea, that the direction of time, your entire life's unfolding, rests on the fact that the cosmos once knew how to be simple, that the elegance of now exists because the universe began in a quiet state of purity and has been forgetting itself ever since. Some physicists describe it as a cosmic act of forgetting, not because something went wrong, but because forgetting is what time is. It's the gradual loss of possibility, the soft expansion into mess, the spreading out of everything once tightly held. And like any story, it has a beginning. Not necessarily a single moment, since time may not even make sense at t equals 0, but a beginning in structure, a beginning in contrast, a beginning where the difference between then and now could be born. So, tonight, as your mind drifts, consider the slope beneath you, the quiet tilt of everything that lets time fall forward, the same tilt that lets galaxies drift apart, that lets memories fade, that lets a leaf drop from a tree and spin softly to the ground. That leaf doesn't fight the slope. It dances with it. And perhaps that's what time is asking of us too. Not to fight the direction, but to understand it. To see that every breath is not just a tick forward, but a tribute to the moment when the universe was smooth and silent and full of promise. It didn't start with noise. It started with clarity. And from that clarity came you. What is it that carries you forward? Not just your legs, not just the turning of the earth or the ticking of the clock on your wall, but that deeper sense of forwardness, the feeling that life is something unfolding, something headed somewhere, even if you're not always sure where or why. At the centre of that feeling is something so quiet and so constant, you may not even notice it working. Memory. You remember waking up. You remember the taste of yesterday's tea. You remember the sound of a voice you haven't heard in years. And through those memories, time takes on meaning. Not just as movement, but as narrative. A before. A path. A shape. Memory is the seam that binds moments together. And what makes it possible is that time has a direction, an arrow, rooted in entropy, and written in every pattern that stays just long enough to be remembered before it disappears. You remember the past and not the future, because causality flows one way. The match lights the candle, not the other way around. The fall follows the stumble. The song comes after the first note, not before it. And this one-way relationship between cause and effect is what lets us build a story out of moments, one that makes sense, that leads us somewhere, that lets us say, this happened, and then that. And yet, when you pause to consider it, this relationship is fragile. If the laws of physics didn't favour entropy, if the universe hadn't started in low order, there would be no asymmetry to lean against. The past wouldn't be before, and the future wouldn't be after. They would just be different directions like north and south, equally real, equally accessible. There would be no reason you could remember one but not the other, but that's not our universe. Ours is a place where broken cups stay broken, where footprints are left, not unstepped, where effects wait patiently behind causes, never stepping in front. And you, your body, your mind, your whole sense of self, are part of this unfolding. Your memories aren't just souvenirs, they are structures, built from biochemical traces, encoded in neural pathways shaped by time's direction. A memory is not a moment stored in a jar. It is a pattern carried forward, living inside a brain that changes with each experience. Like waves climbing a beach, each memory layers itself onto the shore of now, and even as it fades, it leaves behind a contour, a shape. You are that shape. You're not a single moment. You are the persistence of moments, the pattern that remains, even as everything around you changes, the echo that holds form, even as the sound itself decays. But here's something even stranger, even more beautiful. In order to build and hold that pattern, you must resist entropy, at least for a little while. Life does not eliminate entropy. It simply shuffles it, creating local pockets of order at the cost of increased disorder somewhere else. A plant, for example, takes the scattered energy of sunlight and arranges it into leaves, stems, and seeds. A person takes food, oxygen, and memory and arranges them into thoughts, decisions, identities. All of this comes at a price. Entropy still wins eventually. But for a time, for a flicker, life builds shape out of chaos. You are that flicker. When you think, when you dream, when you recall the smell of a childhood room, or the exact laugh of someone you once loved, you're building a kind of order that has never existed before. Not because the moment is preserved perfectly, but because it is remembered uniquely, filtered through the particular story that only you are telling. Your story flows forward because entropy gives it direction, and memory gives it thread. And causality, that silent logic behind every falling leaf and every boiling kettle, keeps the story consistent. It lets each page turn only once. It makes sure the ink dries in the right order. It makes sure that when you reach the next chapter, it follows from the last. This might sound deterministic, but it's not a trap. In fact, it's what makes meaning possible. A universe without direction would be a place without stories. You could not grow. You could not reflect. You could not decide. But because time flows in one direction, and because you ride that flow with memory and anticipation, your choices have shape. They matter. They live in a timeline where after depends on before, and so you walk forward, carried not just by the universe's expansion or the rotation of the Earth, but by the quiet engine of entropy and the louder engine of hope. Time moves forward because you remember, and your memory moves forward too, not as a straight line but as a winding path. A ribbon tied not to every fact, but to the feelings that facts leave behind. You don't remember everything, but you remember what felt like everything. The smell of a certain evening, the echo of your own laughter, the tremble of silence when something ends. That's your arrow. It's made not of equations, but of moments. So tonight, as you rest, take a breath and feel the way that breath sits within a rhythm, one that began before you were born and will continue long after, but that, for now, includes you. You're not outside of time, you're a pattern in time, a wave briefly rising, a memory becoming. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine the most peaceful silence you've ever known. Not the silence of a paused conversation or a quiet room at night, but something deeper. A silence without tension, without expectation. A silence in which nothing is waiting to happen, because everything that could happen already has. Now stretch that silence across the cosmos. That is one way to imagine the far future of the universe, not as an explosion or a catastrophic end, but as a soft and complete stillness, a state where time doesn't stop, but rather becomes something that no longer matters. This idea is known as the heat death of the universe. Despite its name, it is not about burning, but about cooling, an end not of fire, but of fading. The concept begins with entropy, that quiet force we've talked about before, always nudging systems from order to disorder, from contrast to equilibrium. Over time, the energy of the universe spreads out like warmth dispersing in a room. At first, there are stars, pockets of intense energy, bright and temporary. They shine, they burn, they die. Their remains become dust, then gas, then something colder. As eons pass, the universe continues to expand. Galaxies drift further apart, the stars grow fewer and dimmer, and even the black holes, once the most enduring structures in the cosmos, begin to evaporate, slowly releasing their mass as a trickle of faint radiation. Eventually, everything that could change has changed. There are no gradients of heat to drive engines, no chemical imbalances to power thought, no stars to orbit, no events to witness, just an even spread of particles and energy across a vast dark stage. And in that state, nothing happens anymore. It is not that time has run out exactly. There are still ways to count, still mathematical ticks and theoretical durations, but in a universe without change, those ticks lose their meaning. Without change, there is no before and after, just a flat plane of is. Time is not marked by clocks ticking in isolation. Time is measured by contrast, by difference, by events unfolding and relationships shifting, Without that unfolding, time becomes like a metronome clicking in an empty hall, unheard, unneeded. It is still there, perhaps, but it no longer matters. This is what makes the idea of the end of time so subtle and so haunting. There's no wall, no sharp line, just a gradual loss of momentum, the universe gently coasting into equilibrium. And once it reaches that state, there's nothing left to distinguish one moment from the next. Imagine a story in which every page is blank. You could flip from one to another, but it wouldn't feel like a story. Because a story needs tension, it needs change, it needs a reason to turn the page. In the heat death of the universe, the pages still exist, but the tale has ended. There is no ink left to write. This doesn't mean the universe is destroyed. Far from it. All its pieces are still there. The atoms, the photons, the fading traces of what once was, but without contrast, without gradients or structure. There is no more unfolding, no more action, no more time. And yet, this isn't a hopeless image, it's simply peaceful. After all, not everything must end in drama. Some things simply settle, like a pond after the last stone has been thrown, like dust after the final footsteps, like a mind easing into sleep. When scientists speak of the universe's end, they often do so in terms of physics, temperature, entropy, symmetry. But at its heart, the image is deeply poetic, a place where the music is finished and no new notes are left to play, where the instruments still exist but they rest in their cases, where silence is not absence, but completion. And for us, the temporary observers, the travellers through contrast, there's something profoundly grounding in this idea, that even the wildest, most complex story ever told, the story of everything, may one day end not with a crash, but with a sigh, a long, gentle exhale into stillness. Perhaps the real mystery isn't whether time ends, but what remains after meaning has faded, after change has ceased, after all that is dynamic has dissolved into calm. We'll explore that in the next sessions, but for now, simply rest in this moment, a quiet picture of the far future, where the universe, having played out its possibilities, no longer needs to tell the time, not because it's broken, but because there's nothing left to wait for. It's difficult to say exactly when something ends if it doesn't break. When a candle goes out, we see the smoke curling upward. When a story ends, we close the book and place it back on the shelf. But some things don't end that way. They fade, gently, without ceremony, and perhaps time itself will be one of those things. In the last session we imagined a universe growing still, not with destruction, but with balance. No more heat to move, no more stars to shine, no more contrast to distinguish a moment from the next. But what does it actually mean to say that time fades? Could it vanish completely? Would anything, or anyone, notice? Here's where physics becomes not just mysterious, but oddly poetic. In some interpretations of quantum gravity, those theories that try to unify general relativity and quantum mechanics, time isn't always a necessary ingredient. It may emerge only under certain conditions, when systems interact, when complexity arises, when something can notice that something else has changed. If nothing changes, if the universe is fully symmetrical, static and entropic, then time might cease to exist in any meaningful way. It's not that clocks stop ticking, it's that there's no one to hear them, no difference between ticks, no story they can tell. In one perspective, this future is seen through the lens of the Wheeler-DeWitt equation, a strange and beautiful equation from quantum cosmology. It governs the entire universe, but contains no explicit time variable. The universe, from this viewpoint, is described as a wave function of everything. You're timeless, complete, whole. All of history, present and future, held in a static shape. If that sounds abstract, that's because it is. But at its heart, it suggests something gentle, that time, like wind or waves, may only be apparent from within, from a conscious, structured place where change still matters, from a moment like this one, where you sit listening, remembering, thinking. In the far future, if no such minds remain, if there are no gradients left to power clocks, no particles left to measure each other, then time might still exist in the same way that a road exists without cars. But it would be empty, lonely, silent. A clock might survive, but it would die of loneliness. There's a tenderness in that image, not just loss, but stillness. A stillness so complete that it no longer contrasts with anything else. And in that absence of contrast, time slips from experience, like a song whose melody can no longer be heard because the room has filled with quiet. In some speculative theories, the universe might not stay quiet forever. There are hypotheses, deeply uncertain, deeply debated, suggesting that perhaps, in the furthest reaches of the far future, a new fluctuation could arise, a new region of low entropy, a new Big Bang. And with it, a new arrow of time, a new story, a new series of causes and effects. This idea is sometimes called cyclical cosmology, a universe that breathes in ages, not seconds, a cosmos that forgets itself, only to begin again, different in form, but bound by the same dance between order and disorder. But whether time might restart someday, or whether this long silence is truly the end, isn't a question physics can yet answer. What it can offer is the insight that time is not a fixed backdrop, but a process, a relationship. And like all relationships, it is shaped by context, by connection, by participation. You can't remove time from everything and still expect meaning to remain. Time isn't just a thing you walk through, it's the meaning of walking at all. Without change, there's no experience. Without experience, no memory. And without memory, no before. This is why the question isn't, when will time end? But, how does meaning fade? Because we don't fear time vanishing like a candle flame. We fear the moment when things stop mattering, when nothing we do makes a difference, when the stories, the connections, the contrasts, all dissolve into the background hum. That's when time really ends, not at a specific hour, but at the soft edge where sequence no longer holds significance. And yet even here, in this imagined end, with no stars left, no atoms in motion, no minds to watch, there is still a beauty. Because the universe will have become what it was always heading toward, a place of balance, a place of peace, like a wind-down breath after a long day, like a blanket pulled gently over the body of everything. Perhaps time never truly dies. Perhaps it simply steps back, bows once, and exits the stage, leaving only quiet behind. Picture the last light flickering out, not with drama, not with a crash, but like the final ember in a long-cooled hearth. The room doesn't notice. The walls don't shiver. The silence has already arrived. It simply becomes complete. And yet, something remains. Because even when no more change is happening, even when time has lost its rhythm and the universe no longer ticks forward, not everything is truly lost. Some things, like pattern, structure, or information, may still endure, quietly, without movement, like fossils in the dark. In the language of physics, information is the fingerprint left behind by existence. It tells us not just that something was, but how it was, its configuration, its relationships, its history, frozen in the architecture of what remains. And one of the deepest puzzles in modern science is whether this information, this quiet, invisible residue of experience, can ever be truly destroyed. Black holes, those strange cosmic abysses, have forced physicists to ask this question more urgently than ever. According to Stephen Hawking, black holes slowly evaporate over time, releasing radiation. But that process seems to lose information about what originally fell in. If true, this would violate one of the sacred rules of quantum mechanics, that information cannot be erased. And so, over decades, the question has persisted. What happens to information when the universe stops changing? Does it fade like smoke? Or does it remain suspended in stillness? Some suggest that information is never lost, that it is preserved on the boundaries of space itself, like a hologram. This leads to the holographic principle, the idea that all the data describing a volume of space might actually be stored on its surface, like the shadow of a three-dimensional world cast upon a two-dimensional wall. If this is true, then even when time stops flowing, when stars fade and particles drift and no minds are left to observe, it's possible that the story remains, not as memory in the way we think of it, with faces and voices and warmth, but as a trace, a record, like footprints frozen in ancient mud, hardened into stone, long after the traveller is gone, and perhaps that's all time ever was, not a river, but a collection of footprints. A story told not by a narrator, but by the shape of what has been left behind. But we can't help wondering, if no one is left to read that story, does it still matter? This brings us to the final question. What is time without meaning? When you close your eyes, the world doesn't vanish, but your awareness of it shifts. Sounds become soft, edges blur, events slow down, then dissolve. You enter a space where sequence is looser, where images emerge and fade, where logic sometimes fails, but where experience still lingers. We call this dreaming. And perhaps in a poetic sense, the end of time is something like that. A long, still dream, not remembered by any mind, but held quietly in the folds of reality itself. Not experienced, not narrated, not renewed, just present. And if time is deeply tied to meaning, to memory, to change, to awareness, then maybe what remains when time is gone isn't time at all. Maybe it's something prior to time, something we don't yet have words for. A kind of raw existence, neither ticking nor fading, a presence without pulse. Some physicists speculate that space and time are both emergent phenomena, that they arise not from themselves, but from more fundamental ingredients, like heat emerging from the motion of molecules, or colour emerging from the way light is scattered. Time might be an effect, not a cause. And when the right ingredients are no longer in play, no particles, no observers, no interactions, then time, like a mirage, disappears. But just as heat leaves behind warmth, perhaps time leaves behind something too. A pattern. Not a timeline, but a tapestry. Not a ticking clock, but a frozen dance. And you, brief flickering part of that pattern, carry within you a glimpse of this structure. You remember. You feel the arrow. You experience the now. And because of that, you give time its meaning. You're the witness, the observer, the thread that weaves through sequence and turns it into a story. So even if time ends one day, far beyond all stars, that doesn't make your moment less real. Because meaning doesn't require permanence, it requires presence. This moment right now is part of the story, part of the pattern. Even if the future becomes still, even if the cosmic dance ends, the fact that you are here, thinking, breathing, listening, will have been part of the shape of it all. And so, we gently arrive at the end of this arc, not with an answer, not with a wall, but with a breath. Time may not end like a light switch flipped off, or a door slammed shut. It may end the way music ends, by fading into silence so slowly you don't notice the final note until you realise nothing has followed. And then comes the stillness, and in that stillness, perhaps a dream. Even now as you rest, eyes soft, thoughts slow, breath like a tide, your body continues to measure time. Not in numbers or seconds, but in rhythms. The gentle pulse of your heart is not just a beat, it is a count, a pace, a clock that never needed hands or dials. It began long before you were born, fluttering into motion in the quiet dark of the womb, and it has kept its rhythm through every moment of your life since. It doesn't ask for attention, it doesn't wait for permission. It simply continues, quietly marking your presence in time with each soft thump beneath your ribs. And then there's your breath. Inhale, exhale. Not just oxygen in and carbon dioxide out, but a subtle metronome. A tide pulled not by the moon, but by the needs of every cell. Faster when you run, slower when you sleep. Each breath a gentle boundary between what was and what will be. You might not think of yourself as a timekeeper, but your entire body listens to time, not the kind tracked on clocks or calendars, but the deeper, quieter time of life unfolding. Inside you, circadian rhythms flow like internal sunlight, regulating when you feel alert, when you feel tired, when your body digests food or begins to heal. These rhythms don't come from a ticking watch. They emerge from the dance of hormones and neurons, tuned to the patterns of the earth, its rotation, its light, its seasons. Even your temperature follows a daily curve, rising and falling in a quiet loop. Your cells divide on a schedule. Your stomach prepares for meals before you even eat. Your brain cycles through waves of activity, each with its own tempo. You're not just in time, you're made of time, and not just as a clock, but as a listener. You see, your body doesn't simply measure time passively. It responds to it. It listens. It waits. It reacts to the soft passage of change like a shoreline listening to the sea. Each shift in your surroundings, a change in light, in tone, in temperature, is felt, noted, folded into your state of being. Even in stillness, you're not static. In the quiet moments, the ones between tasks, between thoughts, your body continues its intricate choreography. Proteins fold, neurons fire, blood cells carry oxygen like whispered messages, and all of it happens in rhythm, in pattern, in sequence, in time. There is a lovely paradox here, that even when you feel still, you are not frozen. That even as your conscious mind begins to drift towards sleep, your body is keeping time in ways your thoughts never needed to understand. A sleeping clock that works not by hands, but by harmony, not by seconds, but by change. This is why you sometimes wake at the same time each day without needing an alarm. Why you feel hunger on a schedule. Why jet lag feels like a kind of dissonance, a mismatch between the time out there and the time in here. Because your body is tuned. It is attuned. It is always listening. And perhaps this is part of the grace of being human, not just our ability to think about time, to measure it, to name it, but to be woven into it. Not as observers watching from a distance, but as participants, walking, breathing, aging, healing, in step with the rhythms that hold us. And those rhythms are not perfect. They vary, they adjust, they fade, and they return. And in that variability there is something gentle, something forgiving. Because you're not a metronome, you're not a stopwatch, you're a being of pulses and tides, of cycles and fluctuations. Your sense of time is not rigid, it's responsive. It bends with emotion, it stretches with wonder, it contracts with pain. And through all of it, your body adapts, not always logically, but always faithfully. This is the deep time of being alive. It's why an afternoon nap can feel like a journey. Why a familiar scent can transport you across years in a single breath. Why sometimes a day can feel like a blink, and sometimes a moment can feel like forever. Because you're not just counting time, you are feeling it. And that feeling is not something to master or outwit. It is something to sit with, to honour, to listen to as you would listen to your own breath, or the soft hush of wind through trees at night. So now, as the world around you quiets and your body settles into sleep, remember this. You don't need to chase time. You already carry it. You don't need to measure every second. Your heart is doing that for you. You don't need to worry if you've used your time well. You are here. You are alive. You are the rhythm. You might think of now as something tiny, a sliver of time, a fleeting spark, something already gone by the time you notice it. But that isn't quite true. The now you live in, the one your mind weaves from memory, expectation, sensation and thought, is far from narrow. It's spacious. It's soft-edged. It holds more than you think. In reality, now is not a single point. It's a blur of becoming. Your brain doesn't process events in perfect real time. It gathers light, sound and motion, waits just long enough to make sense of what's happening, and then presents you with a unified experience. A stitched-together moment that feels immediate but is really the recent past, gently smoothed over like a soft brush across wet paint. And within that smeared instant, your mind allows in more than just what your senses report. It colours the present with echoes of the past, with memories, associations, and meanings gathered across years. It shades it with predictions about the future, with expectations, simulations, and guesses about what's about to happen next. All of that, memory and anticipation, feeling and context, sits quietly inside the now. Think of now as a window. Through it, you see not only what stands directly in front of you, but also the reflections of what was behind and the light from what's coming. The present is not a divider, it is a lens. That's why certain songs make you cry, not because of the sound itself, but because of the story that comes with it. A specific summer, a face, a hope you once held close. That's why some silences feel loud, because they carry meaning from words that were said long ago. That's why even the feel of a blanket on your skin, or the smell of a cup of tea, can place you in multiple moments at once. You are here, but you're also there, wherever there happens to be in your memory. This is not a flaw. It is the miracle of your consciousness, that you can stand in a single moment and feel the presence of 100 others, that your thoughts can stretch both forward and backward without losing their grounding, that the now you inhabit is not thin, but thick with meaning. And meaning, after all, is what time becomes once we begin to live inside it. We don't experience time as a stopwatch or a tape measure. We feel it in sequences, in stories, in rhythms, in the way one thing leads to another. You remember the first time you rode a bike, not because of the number of seconds it took, but because of how it felt, the wobble, the wind, the fear, the sudden lift into motion. You remember the waiting room before bad news. You remember the softness of someone's voice at midnight. These are moments not because they happened in 1 second or 10, but because they formed a shape in your memory, a landmark in the terrain of your life. And you, listening now, breathing now, are both the traveller and the terrain. You walk through time, yes, but you also shape it. You build its contours with the things you pay attention to. You build its texture with the things you cherish and the things you let go of. You mark its path not with footsteps, but with memory. That's why time can feel fast or slow. It isn't always about how much has happened. It's about how deeply it has moved you. Moments of novelty, a new place, a new love, a sudden realization stretch the now. They make it feel wider, more vivid. Routine compresses, repetition blurs. But even in those blurry stretches, you're still building something. A pattern, a rhythm, a thread that weaves your now into the greater tapestry of your life. So if you ever feel like time is slipping away too fast, try this. Pause. Breathe. Listen not just to the second that just passed, but to the feeling it left behind. That too is part of now. Now is a river, but it's also a lake, holding the clouds of memory, reflecting the branches of thought, still and alive at the same time. And right now, in this very moment, You're being carried by time and shaping it at once. You're not separate from the flow. You're the current. The present is not something you catch. It's something you live inside, stretched across perception, coloured by memory, wrapped in awareness. So as this day ends and your body grows still, let yourself settle into this blur of now, not trying to grasp it, not needing to define it, but simply resting within it. Here, you are not late, you are not early, you are not behind or ahead. You are here, now, and now is more than enough. Time doesn't stop when you sleep. It changes, it softens, it loses its edges. It becomes something more fluid, more atmospheric, like mist rolling through a valley, or a gentle current in a dreamlit stream. You don't measure time in minutes once your eyes close. You feel it in loops, in echoes, in drifting impressions. Time becomes not a schedule, but a cradle. And this is perhaps the most beautiful truth of all. Time is not here to trap you. It's here to carry you. All your life you've moved through time, but just as often it has moved through you. Each moment has shaped you in small ways, brushing past your thoughts like a breeze through tall grass. Each memory that rises, each decision you make, each feeling that lingers longer than expected, all of it, carried on the river of time, but also shaping the banks as it goes. You are not just in time. You are part of how time becomes real. The universe, as far as we can tell, doesn't care about time in the way you do. It doesn't mark birthdays or anniversaries. It doesn't pause for reflection. It doesn't recognize now. Time, to the cosmos, is a coordinate, a label on a point in space, a number in an equation. There's no feeling in it, no story, just states, transitions, changes. But you turned that unfolding into meaning. You took movement and made it memory. You took sequence and made it story. You turned light and sound into a life. This is why, even if the universe doesn't know time, you do. You don't need to prove it. You live it. With every heartbeat, with every quiet breath in the dark. And so, as sleep begins to wrap itself around you like a soft shawl, let yourself remember what time has always been. Not a ruler, not a prison, but a river. And you, the quiet traveller floating upon it. Not rushing, not fighting, just gliding. The currents will take you forward whether or not you paddle. The stars will keep circling whether or not you watch. And your body, that quiet clock we spoke of, will continue its gentle rhythms, counting the dark with its own kind of music. Sleep is not the absence of time. It is your body's way of slipping gently into a different relationship with it. In dreams, time may loop. Moments may blur. Hours may compress into seconds, or stretch into eternities. And yet, something in you always knows how to return. To wake. To rejoin the rhythm. Like a boat finding the river again after drifting into a still cove. Even here, even now, as your limbs grow heavier and your mind starts to drift, you're not falling out of time. You're sinking into it, letting it hold you, letting it pass through you like a breeze through curtains. And maybe that's all sleep ever was. Permission to let go of keeping track. Time will keep itself. You don't have to. So close your eyes. Let the ticking things go quiet. Let the stories wait for tomorrow. Let the future be something soft, like fog on a field. And let the past rest, like a book on a shelf that has already been read. Tonight there is only now, and now is spacious. Now is quiet. Now is enough. Sleep, little river of time. Sleep, small traveller. The world will keep turning. The stars will keep glowing. And you, just as you are,